Welcome, people of the World Wide Web. So this is Chris from Cypher Signal Screen Time. It's the weekend as usual, and you know that this is a movie review because the thumbnail has already given it away. So yes, so this review is for The Bride. So this is the new movie from director Maggie Gyllenhaal. I think it's like the third or fourth film or piece she has directed. It's 2 hours and 6 minutes long. Has quite a good cast. So we have Jessie Buckley as Ida, Christian Bale as Frank or Frankenstein, Annette Bening as Dr. Euphorius, Penelope Cruz as Myra Maloney, and Peter Skarsgård as Jake Willis, kind of cops in these two. Jake Gyllenhaal is a movie star, Ronnie Reed, and then you kind of have this crime boss called Lupino and two thugs, Clyde and James, that we meet. From the trailer, this is obviously kind of a 1930s reimagining of Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein. I've never seen The Bride of Frankenstein. I've seen different versions of Frankenstein, so bear with me when I do my review. Obviously, I don't have everything. Definitely, there is a spin on this that isn't, I don't think, it does look a bit weird from the trailer, but obviously you kind of just think it's a kind of newer story of it. But I would say there's other elements that kind of take more of a front than this. Obviously this is a modern telling, but there are a lot of other elements. Obviously it's getting not a lot of good reviews. This ain't going to be the most amazing review, I will give it that. I do have some positives and some negatives, but we shall get into it. So I'll put the spoiler warning up and we shall get into the film. So as the film starts, if you've not seen it this is already gonna kind of throw you off of how this movie starts. And I think it's reported, people are getting walking out of this. And I can understand this because the trailer doesn't necessarily depict the whole story is about Frank and Frankenstein and his bride, whereas I think there are a lot of other elements that are into this. So the film starts with Mary Shelley. So she is the writer of Frankenstein. There are a few stats that go on that basically she wrote this on a dare. And then you have kind of her talking as her mind is in some sort of limbo. Essentially, when she died, because she died so early, whatever, she has been stuck in this limbo and basically her mind wants to come back into reality. Obviously, she then decides to pick a girl from the 1930s called Ida. The character of Mary Shelley and Ida are played by the same person. Obviously, Mary Shelley is a very British person. Ida is from 1930s Chicago. But she somehow breaks through this imaginary void into the actual brain of this person. So then the film starts off, we're in 1930s. You have Ida, who's kind of a cool girl, a girl of the night, so to speak, partying with a load of guys, two guys in mainly Clyde and James, who are basically men for the local gangster called Lupino, and he's not a very good guy, but there is more to that story. She is kind of having a good time, and then the Mary Shelley personality comes in, and she goes from a kind of having a guy to a very almost Tourette's-like British accent. At this point, I think most people in the cinema, from what I could gauge around me and stuff, even me, were like, what the hell is going on? Why has this been chosen? But me being me, I decided let's carry on. So so you have Idler, because of Mary Shelley's voice comes through and kind of personality takes over. She starts spouting about Lupino and he's killed all these people, blah 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 blah. One thing leads to another, and Clyde pushes her down the stairs. She dies. Her story then kind of ends for a period. Next, we start off with, we see we see Frankenstein, him walking around the town, him basically going to a doctor's office, which is Annette Bening's character, Dr. Nefarious, Euphorius, if I pronounce that right. He thinks it's a woman at first, basically says that he's been looking for a doctor who kind of deals in the same arts that Dr. Frankenstein did for him. And this is the closest person in the modern day of 1930s that he meets. She finds him kind of enamored that obviously he's living flesh and stuff like this, and starts experimenting and stuff like this. And then she says, you can stay here, I'll look after you, testing. He goes, no, I'm not here for you to test on me. I want a bride. I've been alive, I think, since the 1800s sometime. It doesn't specifically say. I think 100 years, maybe 112 years, I think something like that. He mentions is the early 800s he was created, and he's lonely. He's never had interaction, and when he meets Benny, they shake hands. That's the first time he's actually shook someone's hand. He's looking for a bride, not only for the sort of things you do when you find a lover and a partner, but it's the interactions that he's never had. So it's kind of this. The doctor's just interested in him for like experiment, but he wants her to create a bride for him. Kind of goes back and forth, and then she decides actually she will help him out. She wants to do this. They need a body, rather because she doesn't want to cut up all these people and stuffing. So they go to the cemetery and dig up Ida's body. Ida then is brought back to life and she becomes a bride, but she isn't a very complicit person because she has this Mary Shelley personality into her. Obviously, as she's being reformed, she has all this liquid in her that she spurts out, and that's where she gets like the makeup there on her arms and stuff like this, which I thought was really a cool idea. But when she's brought alive, she doesn't want to be Frank's bride. She has no memory of before the incident of her being brought back to life, so she has to trust in her. But she wants to then go out and party, so kind of her and Frank go out to this little club that you saw earlier on, and then they're partying, she's dancing and drinking and stuff, and then kind of, having a good time, and then goes, British and stuff. Like, it is a little bit weird in the whole context of the film. This scene culminates in basically some blokes trying to be over friendly. They leave. As they leave, they follow him out, start trying to kind of put the hurt on Frank. Frank then turns around and beats the two of them to death, curb stomping one guy, which I thought was quite an impressive scene in the film, and the other guy getting smashed against the wall. Someone then takes a picture of them, and now they're on the run because obviously they are now classed as killers. And this is where then the bigger story comes in. You find out Frank, for all the time he's been alive, he's followed this actor Ronnie Reed, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, and the places he visits are the places from the films that he stars in, and he likes to go to the cinema and stuff like this. And him and Idler then start going on this kind of whirlwind tour because he kind of, after this incident, he convinces Idler that her name's Penelope, and that obviously she is the bride and they're already married and stuff like this. So she believes this. This kind of culminates in them kind of going on a Bonnie and Clyde gangster spree and stuff. They keep having certain interactions with cops who end up getting dead because obviously cops, when they see Idler, trying to be a bit over friendly because she's quite a pretty lady, especially for those time. And obviously there are a lot of corrupt cops and stuff. In between this, we then meet the characters of Mariah and Jack Willis. Mallory. She is classed as a receptionist, but she's tagging on to be the first ever detective. Jake is Peter Skarsgård. He's following the Ida character, and you find out there is a link between them two. I won't give it away in this. He basically is following her and brings his secretary along to train her up to be a detective. She will be the first woman detective. People don't really class women as equal rights in this era, and that is shown at no one. This kind of culminates in a kind of shootout where he gets shot by Ida in the foot because he shoots Frank in the head, sorry. And he then decides, he gives up his story and tells it to Mira, and then gives him a badge, and she now becomes like the lead detective to follow them. Because Frank has been shot in the head, Ida takes her back to Dr. Euphorius, to bring him back to life. In between them trying to bring him back to life, all the cops find the car and obviously tracing them because obviously they've shot a cop and everything else. They all turn up and basically shoot Ida dead. Frank and Dead are laying on the table. Mariah kind of comes in, Miria, and says, like, they're all dead. Why stop shooting? It's a bit overkill, because he killed a few cops. They're obviously out for revenge. Go wait outside. I'm in charge of this investigation, and basically the doctor and her assistant need to kind of come in as witnesses. Everybody goes outside the building. Obviously, Mira goes down, have a smoke, looks up, and you see sparkles lighting. And basically, she's left it so they can be brought back to life because she kind of understands a little bit of what's going on. The end. What did I think of this story? I rate this story 4.8 out of 10. It was going to be 5. It's gone down in my estimations. This movie suffers from I don't know its ideas of grandeur, but there is a little bit of not over exaggeration, but essentially, as I say, the trailer from what you see seems like it's a crazy version of Frankenstein and a Bride in Frankenstein. Essentially, how I feel this movie is essentially a 1930s and Bonnie and Clyde movie for that. Not as Robin Banks or not as frivolous as that, but going around America doing kind of what they want to do. You then, instead of Bonnie and Clyde, you have Frankenstein and a Bride of Frankenstein. Obviously, the few developments that they have with them. They've then decided to throw in the Bride of Frankenstein has the mind of Mary Shelley, which is a really weird design choice, and why you would even go for that. As I say, the film starts off with that scene, and I think it throws a lot of people, including myself, that you have the real life author of a fictional character who then returns to essentially what they believe is the human world, but a human world where her fictional character is actually alive, and she then becomes the brain or inhabits the brain of the person who then becomes the bride of the Frankenstein, which is something that I don't think she wrote. I could be wrong if she did, or maybe she did. And it's this whole like crossing of reality and fiction and stuff like this. It just seemed a very weird choice, because also at the very beginning she goes from like her normal pretty self, and as I've said, like does British and likes to kind of spout off words, and it does seem a little bit like kind of Tourette's, because there are kind of like tics and that stuff that come with it. But it gets less and less as kind of time goes on, like it's almost forgotten about. Whereas kind of the story starts off with Mary Shelley kind of going, well, you know, I'm going to react this so I can come back to Earth, and you would think her personality would come through stronger. And the same way that she, you know, and it's a very weird choice. I think I can understand why people have walked out of it, because it is, you know, it's not a movie I will buy. It's not a movie I will go back and revisit. It is, you know, and you know the makeup is very good. The design for the bride is very good. I like Frank's, you know, the interaction between those two characters of Jesse Buckley and Christian Bale. I thought they had really good chemistry. Annette Bening's character, the kind of zany doctor, I thought was really, really good as well. I liked her. I thought she should have had a bit more. You know, the kind of the aesthetics and the design of her lab and the designs overall of how they've done the bride and a few little bits are good. How it's shot and the world of 1930s again looks really, really good. And even the whole at the very beginning where Frank has, when you were learning like Frank's been alive this long, and like he sees the Ronnie Reed character and has a connection stuff there. I can understand that. It's then when it gets really zany at one point, there's a dance number that actually kind of does happen, and there's, you know, and it's the mix between fiction and real world just blurs a lot in this movie, and I'm not quite sure why those designs were chosen and why those options were, but that is it. But have you seen The Bride? Let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, because I could talk about this all day. I've been Chris from Soft Signal Screen Time. If you do like this video or want to watch any of my other ones, I would appreciate it. If you feel the need and you want to subscribe, I would also appreciate that as well. Otherwise, I'll definitely see you in the next one.